Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. For those of you that don't know, my name is Ethan. Today we're going over a new ornithomimid discovery from Japan. And as well, we're going to be going over a wide variety of other species of prehistoric animals that coexisted at least during the Mesozoic era or the time of the dinosaurs. So from Sci News, new species of ostrich-mimic dinosaur discovered in Japan. Paleontologists from Fukuai Prefectural University and the Fukuai Prefectural Dinosaur Museum have added another species of theropod dinosaur to the prehistoric catalog. Well, this is fascinating to hear considering Japan in general, as well as Korea, does not obtain many species of dinosaurs. And in many cases, even later in prehistory, like the Cenozoic era or the time of mammals, in many cases, prehistoric mammals are not very common as well. So it's good to hear that we have a distant relative of today's ostriches, emus, rheas, cassowaries that existed over in Japan. So the ornithomimids were a group of theropod dinosaurs that existed, well, first evolved somewhere around 140 million years ago during the very beginning of the early Cretaceous period. So at this time, though, it was just simply the large family Ornithomimosauridae, and the true members of Ornithomimidae wouldn't appear until the beginning of the late Cretaceous, so pushing somewhere between 95 to 96 million years ago. So I wonder how old this specific relative is, or member of the group. Seems to be like a crocodile tail here, or some sort of crocodilomorph. Oh, So, when looking at this specific species of animal in earlier depictions, the ornithomimids, in fact, we can look up another species, tend to be depicted as just pretty much scaly, and wasn't until later that feathers would be added, like many species of theropods. So, Struthiomimus, Struthiomimus. There we go. So, Struthiomimus is another species of ornithomimid. At the moment, we don't know if they've given this specific specimen that they have found a genus and species name. But this distant relative lived over in Alberta, Canada during the late Cretaceous period, around 75 million years ago during the late Campanian stage. And this animal reached somewhere around 12 to 13 feet in length. They're pushing around 4 meters and probably weighed somewhere around 300 pounds or a little over 140 kilograms.
Okay, it's an AI one. Do you like it?
No. Um, this might work for a certain member of the Alvarez sword family, possibly, but even then, that's pushing it. But for an ornithomimid, even a youngster, not so much. Um, when it comes to ornithomimids in general, these animals are not known for having teeth inside their mouth. They're in many cases known as like the toothless theropods. And well, not including like certain earlier species of bird. But the ornithomimids were also much more closely related to birds, as well as different species of the dromaeosaur lineage of dinosaurs, compared to other lineages of dinosaur in general, especially of the Saurischian group of dinosaurs, which consisted of the carnivorous theropods such as Allosaurus, T Rex, Velociraptor, and the long necked sauropods such as Brachiosaurus, Diplodocus, Alamosaurus. But Struthiomimus was likely, like many species of ornithomimid, feeding on different species of plants as well as different species of flowers and probably insects.
Why does this guy feel like an ostrich?
Well, that's why they're referred to as the ostrich-like dinosaurs, even though they were still quite distantly related to ostriches.
Oh, I forgot it was titled that.
And also a full-grown T-Rex, or well, in this case, if it's because it looks more like a desert sort of ecosystem, it could be representing a Tarbosaurus, which is an Asian relative, earlier Asian relative to T-Rex. It still wouldn't have any feathers on its skin, considering the specimens of skin that we have found of larger species of tyrannosaurs seem to have been pretty much plain without any feathers, or there aren't any pigment fibers preserved. We can look up another species. Oh, yeah. So this is a pretty, um, a well preserved specimen of a Struthiomimus. In fact, the ornithomimids in general, in many cases, tend to be preserved as quite curved. And this has also occurred in certain other species of theropods, much smaller members of the dromaeosaur family, in some cases representing duck or being quite similar in reconstruction to ducks. In fact, let's see if we can find one. So, Halskiaraptor, I believe. So, Halziakraptor. Be a small, odd-looking creature, if anything pops up.
HLASZKARAPTOR.
Oh, that might be right.
Yeah, the
Is he
eyes aren't in there.
is he very feathered? Small type of creature. There he is. So this lineage of dromaeosaurs is not very often mentioned. This is definitely a later species of Asian dromaeosaur. Well, technically Velociraptor, Adosaurus. In fact, I guess we can look him up a bit later. But are all different species of Asian dromaeosaurs. Many of these creatures being found in different areas of China as well as in Mongolia, and specifically in many cases the Gobi Desert, which consists of much of the country of Mongolia, as well as a sliver of north central China adjacent to Mongolia. Certain other Chinese formations can also score raptors, and occasionally even Russia, and a bit further west into the different stands of the
This guy's
Middle
gonna
East.
be a little small, but
That's his skeleton. Yeah. It's very well preserved. He might have been one of the species of dromaeosaur that I was referring to when I was thinking of them being preserved in sort of a curved type of manner. In some cases, you might even guess that this animal was possibly protecting a clutch of eggs, kind of like their relatives, the oviraptorids, have been in many cases preserved, huddling amongst their eggs. Like, simply, they would have created a bit of an inner section for their bodies to rest in, and their eggs would be on the perimeter in a circular, pattern. Okay, so this animal was maybe somewhere around 2 feet in length. They're pushing point 7 meters and probably didn't weigh much more than 10 to 15 pounds. It was a rather small animal, maybe pushing somewhere around 6 to 7 kilograms. It was likely just feeding on different species of small reptiles or small amphibians in the area, and might have been feeding on different species of insects, possibly maybe even the different flowers in the region, possibly an omnivore, not really having the ability to go after larger prey items. It did score sickle claws. It likely might have preyed on other dinosaur hatchlings now and then, but just didn't have the physical ability like larger species of dromaeosaurs to attack larger, even smaller ceratopsians.
what was the other one you wanted?
Um, the sign ornithomimus. Ornithomimus. So Sinornithomimus. Now, this animal is not from Canada or North America in general. This is also a species of Lake Cretaceous ornithomimid from the Lake Cretaceous of Mongolia. So, this animal was somewhere around a similar size to Struthiomimus, probably reaching somewhere between 13 to 18 feet in length. So, pushing somewhere between 4 to 5.5 meters, and probably weighed between 3 to 400 pounds, or a little over 170 kilograms. And like the Struthiomimus, did not score teeth as well. Likely was covered in feathers. It does seem with at least smaller species of ornithomimids that we do have evidence for these animals having feathers. Actually, not even the smaller ones. Technically, the larger species, even like the more famous Mongolian Gallimimus, and I even believe the North American Ornithomimus, have been discovered with pigment fibers, at least when it comes to the legs of these animals, hitting about the lower end of the thigh of their body structure. So just above the knee is where you would have the feathers halt, at least when it came to the leg. And you would just simply have a lot of different types of scale structures occurring throughout different parts of their shin, as well as their ankles and their toes. It would be very similar to certain species of birds today. This is definitely a very interesting setting. I'm guessing they're with chicks. I thought they were like some small species of maybe thessalosauran dinosaur or just smaller ornithopods in general. But after a closer examination, these seem to be their chicks.
This guy's funny.
Yeah, this used to be a bit of a typical sort of a look for a baby ornithomimid.
I mean, they were
They were
getting
also
knocked backwards.
um somewhat, but where they have just extremely wide eyes compared to their body size. Though, the wide eye characteristic is a bit of a typical sort of a look for wide variety of different species of ornithomimids. So they probably had decent vision compared to many species of dinosaurs that at least fed on plants to a certain extent. Compared to most theropods, they were probably about average. See, what's another thing? He probably should be covered in a wider series or much larger series of feathers, but this is also a picture from what 23 years ago, so it's not bad. Um, oh yeah, the ornithomimids also have some of the longest arms compared to their body size of any species of theropod dinosaur. However, they weren't very powerful. Okay, let's head back to the article and see what occurred. The newly discovered species lived in what is now Japan during the Aptial age of the early Cretaceous epoch. Whoa. Okay. So this is not a member of the Ornithomimidae lineage of Ornithomimosaurus. It's just a primitive Ornithomimosaur. So this is very fascinating. Between 121 and 113 million years ago. Well, that's quite a time gap. Usually, species do not exist for this long, but it can vary. You have animals like the coelacanths, which have been around since the Devonian period over 375 million years ago. So it's always possible, even with land based dinosaurs. But I was referring to a fish. Dubbed Tyrannomimus bucoensis, the species belongs to the dinosaur family Ornithomimosauridae. Yeah, that's not surprising that they gave the word tyranno to this animal. Apparently, this ornithomimosaur was a tyrant. Very common in the Cretaceous period. Ornithomimosaurs first appeared in the early Cretaceous and persisted until the late Cretaceous epoch. Well, technically, the ornithomimids in general are just a branch of Ornithomimosaurs. So, primitive Ornithomimosaurs, that sentence would be correct. But if you're talking about the ornithomimids as a whole, then no, they still would have persisted until the very end of the Cretaceous period. They were fast running, omnivorous slash herbivorous ostrich sized theropod dinosaurs. They would reach larger than an ostrich. They wouldn't reach the size necessarily of the giant moas or the elephant birds of New Zealand back in the Ice Age or the Pleistocene epoch. In fact, recently, the moa or the elephant bird went extinct. But, um, which they could weigh in some cases well over 1,300 pounds or much more than 600 kilograms. The problem is that, like the mower, the elephant bird was very heavily built. It had very dense bones. Ornithomimosaurs seem to have had much more hollow bones, similar to ostriches, rheas, the emus. So they were probably capable of running it up to 35 to 40 miles per hour or pushing well over 60 kilometers. So let's see. Almost all of them were toothless, and apparently their jaws were covered by a horny beak. Well, it was that the beak was covered in an extra layer of keratin, which might have also added sharpness to the beak. Horny though, beak, that description or adjective really only applies to certain characteristics, horn like characteristics you would see on top of certain dinosaur skulls, especially when referring to different species of horned dinosaurs like ceratopsians and chylosaurs, notosaurs less so, but it can occur, or certain species of theropod dinosaurs. Now, ornithomimids are theropods, but they really don't contain any horn-like characteristics. and I have not heard of a beak, with that type of, um, a description. Okay, they also had very long legs and arms. Yes, they also had very long shin bones compared to the thigh bone, which also have very long ankle bones, tends to equate to a fast runner. Also, for ornithomime, it's very possible they had very good stamina as well. Their fossils are known from Laurasia, now Asia, Europe, and North America, as well as Africa and possibly Australia. Yeah, Africa, they're not very common. I don't really know exactly where they're coming from in Africa. Australia, I believe they're just fragments at this moment. Ornithomimosauridae consists of the ostrich-mimic dinosaurs, most of which showing cursorial running adaptations or cursorial that often exhibit features indicative of herbivory. Lead author Dr. Soki Hattori and colleagues wrote in their paper. It's still very much up for debate, but it is very possible that these animals were simply omnivores. Let's see. So let's look up a predator or one actually capable of taking on larger dinosaurs. Adasaurus. Adasaurus. This is actually a larger relative of the velociraptor. Um, hmm. He's not terrible, but referring to Adasaurus in general. So this is a member of the Dromaeosaur family, more specifically, Velociraptorni. And like Velociraptor, this animal had a very long and thin, narrow snout, but it wasn't necessarily as lightly built like Velociraptor. But Velociraptor, there's evidence for Velociraptor hunting animals over 4 times its size. Now, that's Niotosaurus. This looks more of like a relative to the Therizinosaurus, which was probably it. Therizinosaurus likely had not evolved yet. So this is Adasaurus, which is virtually the Deinonychus of the Velociraptorni lineage. Um, Basically, what I mean by that is it could reach well over 11 feet or pushing 3.2 meters and probably weigh somewhere around 200 pounds, or a little over 90 kilograms. So this was a massive member of the family and possibly one of the largest. Yeah, this animal definitely looks a lot more friendlier. Considering he was probably hunting different species of hadrosaurs in the region. That might not sound impressive considering the duckbill dinosaurs tend to be seen as the pushovers of the Cretaceous, but you have to remember that herbivores in general tend to be much more aggressive than the carnivores because they have to be concerned about carnivores eating them. But there are also other attributes to that. I think in many cases, herbivores have to um, it's not necessarily travel further distances to find food, but they have to acquire such a much larger portion of food compared to the carnivores in many instances in order to obtain a certain amount of nutrients. Whereas the carnivores, it's very simple. It's just right there from the animal protein, calories, fat. But when referring to Adasaurus, where was I getting with that? Oh, it's likely feeding on relatives of the Saurolophid lineage of dinosaurs or lineage of hadrosaurs, members of the Lambeosaurine lineage as well, may be hunting certain species of smaller ceratopsians in the area.
I like this.
It is also from China, Mongolia. Yeah, they just use the Jurassic Park 3 coloration, which I still think looks good. They just gave it a more Adasaurus look. It is very interesting. I mean, because I think one of those models almost have like a Velociraptor, at least the skull structure, sort of accumulation to it.
Okay, this guy looks like a cartoon.
Now, what is okay? Well, that's different. Yeah, well, definitely his tongue did not have the ability to have such a structure and to be positioned in that way. It would just stay completely flat. But as for the rest of the animal, it seems fairly good. This animal was probably capable of also running up to 30 miles
Oh,
per
wait a minute.
hour.
This is someone saying this one's a Velosa.
It's what?
It's saying it's a Velosa.
Oh, uh,
Doesn't look like one.
it does have certain characteristics of Velociraptor, but there's something about it that makes it more robust. Like even the structure, the ankles, the toes, though the sickle claws or the toe claws in this instance look much larger than the former picture. Outside the tongue issue, I think it looks like a very good Adasaurus. Now, if it is Velociraptor, um, I mean, it looks decent.
Its beak or whatever that would be called.
What, the teeth or the snout?
Yeah.
It seems to be missing a few teeth, but that's okay. Animals like Adasaurus and Velociraptor would have consistently lost their teeth over their lifetime, much like pretty much every species of dinosaur. In fact, the whole Archosauromorph lineage of animals as well, and even different species of sharks. It might even occur with the different species of marine reptiles in the ocean, despite them being very far off from the Archosauromorph lineage. Okay, so back to the article. Recent discoveries have greatly improved our knowledge of their evolutionary history, including the divergence into the Ornithomimidae and Dinocaridae in the early Cretaceous. So, Dinocaridae it's probably referring to a few species like the Dinohyrus, which is the largest species of Ornithomimid to be discovered. Virtually almost like the Therizinosaurus of the Ornithomimid lineage, except it's much more robustly built and has a hump, but not like a camel. It's literally part of its anatomy, their skeletal anatomy. But the early part of their history remains obscured. That is true. Ornithomimosaurs, earlier into their evolution, are not very common. So, for the first 50 million years of the Cretaceous, I'd say at least 45 million years, they're not very common. Let's see. The early part of their history remains obscured because their fossil remains are scarce in the Aptian to Albian sediments of these periods of the Cretaceous. So the type and referred specimens of Tyrannomimus fukuensis were found in the Catadeni dinosaur quarry of the Kitadeni Formation in the northern part of Katsuyama Fukyu, central Japan. Huh. It's probably where certain other species of dinosaur have come from as well, like a couple species of hadrosaurs. Specimens include two parts of the brain case, several vertebrae, and bone fragments. In recent years, many isolated ornithomimosaur remains have been recovered from the Aptian Kytidini Formation. Okay, so let's bring up an animal that probably lived a bit further away. Silutitan. Silutitan.
Wait, do that again.
Silutitan. Okay, so this is him. So this is a member of I believe, Somphospondyli lineage of macronenian sauropods. So these animals first evolved somewhere around 140 to 150 million years ago during the Jurassic period. The early Cretaceous to the late Jurassic. And then would still exist until somewhere around 90 million years ago during the early late Cretaceous period. This specific species, the Silutitan, could reach somewhere around 62 feet in length or pushing probably around 18 to 20 meters and weighs somewhere around maybe 26 tons. So it was a medium sized species of sauropod from the Cretaceous of China and Mongolia, possibly over into Russia as well. Probably dealing with that might be an Adasaurus that it's stuck in the picture, but this also is an AI image. You would not find a species of theropod just running in the midst of a large sauropod. It's interesting. You would think that the animals like the sauropods would just be gentle creatures, and depending on the individual, they might have been. But there are many cases where
Well,
even
elephants aren't gentle.
yeah, many cases with like those the social. I'd say also the more intelligent ones, to an extent, might be more aggressive.
So you're saying the other picture was incorrect.
I was thinking of giraffes. Um, yeah, it when it came to certain parts of the overall neck structure, a little too robust. Though animals like Titan had quite um decent sized or at least wide necks compared to their body size. Maybe not to the same extent as certain other species of the Titanosauridae lineage of sauropods, but at least for members of their own group, they did. So this seems to be a bit of oh, it's not an older picture. It's actually recent. They just gave it a more like 1990s look. Interesting. I think it looks pretty good. Yeah, and, I think they stuck another species of dinosaur with the Titan. Seems to be a member of the Saltosaur lineage because they gave osteoderms around the different parts of the rib cage, the upper shoulder blades, the back of the tail, or I guess right next to the thighs. It's not hitting me what specific species of Saltosaur this could be. Saltosaurs are a little more commonly known from South America, not as much over in Asia. Yeah, this guy's got an issue. Um,
What's wrong with his feet?
Yeah, his
Yeah,
thumbnail should be on the other side next to where his thumb would be, not
growing up behind his foot.
yeah. He has a very he has a lot of genetic issues in this case.
Well,
Osteoderms are far too large.
you don't want AI gene splicing.
Yeah, that too. Um, yeah, this isn't bad. I wonder who that specific individual is in the corner. It's almost like looks like some species of Spinosaur or maybe it's some member of the Allosauridae lineage of dinosaurs. Hmm. Let's also look up a species of pterosaur. Um, just to mention, Meganopterus. So Meganopterus. So this animal, I believe, inhabited certain parts of China and Russia around 125 million years ago during the middle early Cretaceous. It's also a member of the Tenechasmatidae lineage of pterosaurs, which first evolved from around 160 million years ago during the late Jurassic period and would mysteriously go extinct around 105 million years ago, right before the end of the early Cretaceous. So it is a bit of an odd occurrence with specifically this large lineage of pterosaurs thriving during the early Cretaceous as well as the late Jurassic, and then just mysteriously disappearing. Maybe there were certain climatic changes that occurred as well as ecological changes that they simply couldn't adapt to. Maybe their different fishing sources just simply died out. It's a huge question.
Okay, AI again.
Yeah, this is not him.
What's two different ones? They're not even the same thing.
Yeah, but Meganopteryx, I'm adding an X to the name. Meganopteryx is known for having a much longer neck compared to its body size. Yeah, this is a bit closer. It's quite fragmented in its remains, but I believe the skull is, like in the specimen, fully intact, and also very distinct conical teeth at the end of its snout. Very specialized for hunting smaller species of fish. So this is not an animal that's really meant for going after anything else.
What is with the beak on this thing?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a guess as to how the teeth were splayed out, but I think they were a little more vertical in structure and not aimed towards the side, like with what might be seen with certain species of the Ornithochiridae lineage of pterosaurs. This animal, however, had a wingspan of over 23 feet, or pushing 7 meters, which for 125 million years ago was a decent wingspan. Now, this animal was very lightly built. It wasn't like some certain lineages of pterosaurs that would be probably weigh much more than this animal. So I'm guessing somewhere between 40 to 50 pounds at most, or um, somewhere in the realm of 15 to 20 kilograms. It's not necessarily one of those pterosaurs which could probably take on a human, and which there were a number that could, especially certain individuals in the early Cretaceous and then later on to the late Cretaceous. But this was one of those species, despite its wingspan, even its height, it was about as tall as a person. Um, or at least if you're somewhere around 6'5" or 6'6" or pushing 2 meters. But it was likely just this is one of those cases where it's a pushover. So just meant for flying around and munching on fish, not much else. So let's head over back to the article. So the specimens include. I already said that. Um, So these remains represent multiple individuals that share some morphological features common to them, but unknown in other ornithomimosaurs, suggesting a monospecific accumulation of a new species. As a result of the description and phylogenetic analysis, the Chaetodinae ornithomimosaur is recovered as a new genus and species Tyrannomimus fukuensis. Thought it was of like Tyrannomimus for a second was already known. Um, let's see. So, due to its similarity to Tyrannomimus fukuensis, Aviatyrannus jurassica, a dinosaur species previously considered an early tyrannosaur, may represent the earliest ornithomimosaur from the late Jurassic of Europe, significantly expanding the range of ornithomimosauriae. Ornithomimosaurs are known from Europe, I believe also Eastern Europe in general, but
Wait, wait.
they're
This
not
is
very
saying
common.
they are Tyrannosaurs?
No, it was originally thought to be an early species of Tyrannosaur from, I'm guessing, the early
Okay,
Cretaceous,
I see that now.
and they realized, or further analyses, and the conclusion is that this is a species of Ornithomimosaur, which I'm guessing is also much smaller in this case to animals like Struthiomimus, Ornithomimus. So, I guess another species of predator. So the Siam raptor. Or
Oh, you want me to pull it up?
let's go ahead and look up this carnivore. So Siamraptor. So this is a species of Carcharodontosaur from Mongolia around I believe somewhere around 110 million years ago. It is probably reaching somewhere around 35 feet in length. They're pushing 11 meters and weighing up to 3 to 4.5 tons. So this was one of the largest species of carnivores to exist over in the Mongolia and China region at this time in the Cretaceous. So it is a close relative of the African Carcharodontosaurus, which at this point would not have evolved yet. Carcharodontosaurus won't appear on the fossil record until somewhere around 98 million years ago, at the beginning of the late Cretaceous. But there were also different species over in South America, such as Mapusaurus. Also, a wide range of other smaller species of Crocodontosaurs. But Siam raptor, despite its name, is not closely related to the Dromaeosaurs or the Megaraptors in general. But this animal was probably feeding on certain relatives of the Mamenchosaur lineage of sauropod dinosaurs, as well as even different species of Asian macroninian sauropods as well. Not ornithomimids, but ornithopods in general, so relatives of the hadrosaurs or the group of dinosaurs that consist of the hadrosaurs, iguanodontids, the Thessalsaurians are probably a much smaller portion of this carnivore's diet. It would have had a somewhat similar reconstruction to Carcharodontosaurus in general, possibly even hunting in packs. considering when looking at especially the upper part of the skull of this animal, it's quite similar. And even when it comes to the overall arm structure, even the legs, but it is a bit more nimble than um, carcharodontosaurs, even the larger carcharodontosaurs in general, which is expected considering it's less than half the size. There is another animal, the Raptor. So Vayanraptor. Did it appear? Okay. So this next animal is also from the early Cretaceous of Mongolia and China. It's not him. Um, yeah, it's just a some sort of animatronic. I'm guessing from the Jurassic Park raptors. The dromaeosaurs in general are very distinct in overall morphology. I would say this is a bit closer, but Megaraptors in general, it's also a bit of a question if this animal that I'm referring to is a Megaraptor, but does score very Megaraptorid like features. Um, yeah, that's not him. It should be, yeah, definitely much more heavily built, but having when it comes to the skull structure, Megaraptors in general, they're a bit narrow in structure, but they can also be quite robust. What's a good representation? It's kind of like something or evolution mixed the Velociraptor skull structure with not necessarily Deinonychus, but almost like a Metracanthosaur or um, maybe even a Carcharodontosaur as well.
I can't find a good one.
This could be the animal. It's definitely closer to the Raptor.
There you
Somewhat.
go.
Yeah, I could see somebody trying to claim this as a Megaraptorid, but it's got an almost Carcharodontosaur sort of a face. I mean, it's okay. Um, let's see, I'm trying to figure it out. This animal was probably somewhere around 18 to 20 feet in length, so probably pushing about 6 meters and weighing close to 1,700 pounds or a little over 800 kilograms. Likely feeding on some smaller species of sauropod in the region of Asia that inhabited, as well as different species of ornithopods and possibly even other species of nodosaurs or the armored dinosaurs that would have inhabited the area. At this point in the Cretaceous, it certainly is possible that this Megaraptorid might have been hunting certain early Cretaceous species of stegosaurs in the region, considering early Cretaceous stegosaurs are not often talked about. So back to the article. The finding fills a 20 million year ghost lineage of Ornithomimosauriae, implied by the presence of the oldest fossil record of Minoraptora. Minoraptora is a huge lineage of dinosaurs. Well, at least when it comes to the theropods. It consists of different members of the Oviraptor lineage, the dromaeosaurs, birds. This also technically holds a family of theropods called Paravis, which would consist of the birds. Allosaurids, certain other members of the Coelurosaur lineage of dinosaurs, believe even the compsognathids of the Jurassic as well. From the Middle Jurassic, and it's consistent with the hypothesis that their biogeographic range was widespread before the Pangean breakup in the Cambrian between 155 and 145 million years ago. Wait, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was registering 249, 255 million years ago. Okay, that sounds right because there weren't any dinosaurs over 235 million years ago. Okay, that's actually really interesting to hear, considering I that's kind of surprising that the ornithomimosaurs are filling in this type of an answer, which I guess isn't too surprising considering once we find certain specimens of different dinosaurs in areas in a certain period where they haven't been found before, especially earlier in their evolution, it can answer a lot even when it comes to different continental breakups or even enclosements like this. Well, this is more of a breakup. Let's see, who's was there anything else? Okay. Thanks for joining and happy International Ornithomimidae Day. We're streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. And remember that nothing is better than